AITA for refusing to let my parents move into my new house. I, 34M, recently accomplished something I've been working toward for years. I bought my first home. It's not extravagant by any means, but it's mine. It's a cozy 3-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood, perfect for the kind of life I've been dreaming of, peaceful, independent, and mine to shape however I see fit. Growing up, life wasn't exactly easy for my family. My parents worked hard, sometimes too hard, to make ends meet and give me and my siblings the best they could. My mom worked double shifts as a nurse, and my dad took on odd jobs alongside his day job to ensure we never went without. Because of their sacrifices, I was able to go to college and eventually land a well-paying job. I've always been grateful for what they did for me, and I make sure to remind them of that every chance I get. After college, I moved back in with my parents for financial reasons. At the time, it made sense. Living with them allowed me to save money while paying off student loans and getting my career off the ground. But those years weren't easy. My parents, loving as they are, have strong opinions about, well, everything. From how I spent my weekends to the food I ate, there was always a comment or suggestion about how I should be living my life. It wasn't malicious, just part of their nature, but it wore on me. I finally moved out in my late 20s, renting an apartment to get a taste of independence. That experience solidified my determination to one day own a home of my own. I wanted a space where I could make my own decisions, live on my own terms, and not feel like I was constantly being monitored or judged. So, after years of grinding, saving, and dreaming, I finally did it. I bought the house. When I first told my parents, they were thrilled. My mom cried tears of joy, and my dad gave me one of those rare, proud smiles that said more than words ever could. It felt like everything was falling into place. But then a week later, they came to visit. I assumed they just wanted to see the place, offer some advice on homeownership, and maybe help me with a few things. Instead, they sat me down and said they had a proposal. They wanted to move in with me. I was stunned. I didn't even know how to respond at first. They explained that they were tired of renting and worried about the future. With retirement looming, they wanted a more stable living situation and thought this would be the perfect solution. They also said it would allow them to downsize and save money, and they framed it as a way for us to be together as a family again. I asked for some time to think it over. I didn't want to dismiss them outright, but I also knew in my heart that this wasn't what I wanted. This house represented a fresh start for me, a space where I could finally be myself without compromise. After a few days of mulling it over, I gave them my answer. I sat them down and told them, as gently as I could, that while I understood their concerns, I wasn't comfortable with the idea of them moving in. I explained that I'd spent most of my life living with them and was looking forward to having my own space. I reassured them that it wasn't about them personally, it was about me finally having a chance to experience life on my own terms. Their reaction was not what I expected. My mom's face fell, and my dad immediately launched into a speech about all the sacrifices they'd made for me. They reminded me of how they'd worked tirelessly to support me through college, how they let me stay at home rent-free for years, and how they expected me to honor them in return. My mom, who is usually calm and composed, started crying and said, "We're not getting any younger. We just thought our son would want us close in our golden years." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I love my parents more than anything, and seeing them so upset was heartbreaking. But at the same time, I couldn't ignore my own needs and boundaries. I tried to explain that it wasn't about being ungrateful. It was about wanting to live independently and enjoy the home I'd worked so hard to achieve. Unfortunately, they didn't see it that way. My dad called me selfish, and my mom said she never imagined her own son would turn his back on them. The guilt they threw at me was overwhelming. Things only got worse when word spread to the rest of the family. My aunts, uncles, and cousins all had opinions, and of course they didn't hesitate to share them. Some sided with me, saying I wasn't obligated to let anyone live in my house. Others, however, took my parents' side, accusing me of being ungrateful and forgetting where I came from. One cousin even said, "You're living the dream. The least you can do is share it with the people who got you here." I started questioning myself. Maybe I was being selfish. Maybe this was my chance to repay my parents for everything they'd done for me. But then I thought about what letting them move in would actually mean: giving up my independence, losing the peace and freedom I'd worked so hard for, and essentially going back to a dynamic I'd been desperate to escape. In an effort to find a compromise, I suggested other options. I offered to help them financially if money was their main concern. I even looked into nearby senior communities where they could downsize without losing their independence. But they rejected every suggestion, insisting that moving in with me was the only solution that made sense. It's been weeks since this all started, and the tension hasn't eased. My relationship with my parents feels strained, and I can't shake the feeling that I've let them down. My mom barely speaks to me now, and when she does, it's clipped and distant. My dad has taken to making passive-aggressive comments whenever we talk, like, "Must be nice to live in a big house all by yourself." I've been pouring all my energy into making the house feel like home, but there's a shadow over everything. Every time I sit in the living room or cook in the kitchen, I hear my parents' voices in my head, accusing me of being ungrateful. I keep reminding myself of the reasons I said no. I worked hard for this house, and I deserve to enjoy it on my own terms. I'm willing to help my parents in other ways, but I can't sacrifice my independence. Still, the guilt eats at me. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my parents move in? Or am I justified in wanting to protect the life I've built for myself?